Alrighty, back to the future. Okay, your future has to be rewritten, overwritten by the Lord. So imagine this. We talked about this many different times. So spells, spellcasters. You can go on Etsy and buy a spellcaster, a witch to cast a spell. So what a lot of people don't understand, a lot of churches have a spirit of sleep and lethargy so that they can't understand, they can't stay awake. And one of my good pastor friends said that every time he tried to read the Bible, he'd fall asleep. So he said most of the time the Bible rested on his chest, and when he woke up, he read it again. And it took a lot of times for him to stay awake. So they put a spirit of sleep, a spell. The witches and warlocks put a spell over the congregation. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, like your witches and your warlocks, are your friends, could be family, and they're practicing witchcraft without a lot of people knowing it. So, a different type of witchcraft is witcraft, the craft of intelligence. So the ones that are more spiritually in the know lord over the people and put them in a spirit of sleep. And just as Jesus, the curtain was torn from top to bottom, so your personal relationship was now, because the priest was no longer needed. So what they did is they rebuilt the church and they put you under the spell of the pastor. The witches, the women, put you under spell to the pastor, so you worship the pastor because he's a little Lucifer on stage. So they've taken the scripture. The devil's people, the witches, know the scripture better than most people do. And that term witchcraft and craft of intelligence to lord over you. So, but you got to understand manipulation, coercion, dark magic, spells. So then what they did is they didn't allow you back in the day to only read, one book or four books, the Gospels, and never could launch in the book of Acts and thereafter. Because they never wanted you to be in a relationship. They never wanted you to testify. They never wanted you to have a testimony. They just wanted to keep you asleep, sitting on the bench, giving your money, sitting on the bench, staying asleep, staying a zombie, under the control of what they call the church, which is totally different than what Jesus did. Jesus sent out the ecclesia. And when they came to a town, Jesus taking over your town. They didn't ask that Jesus would like to take over your town. No, Jesus taking over your town. And they built communities on the heavenly, into the third, into the first, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in communities. So it's crazy. You can go to a million church services, and like I used to go to this one fellowship, and people seemed nice and everything else, and there wasn't. It was so subtle. So there's witchcraft going on, but we didn't know if there was any witches in the house. But you'd go in there and you start nodding off like you on heroin. After about 15 minutes, you start nodding off. And guy asked me if I wanted to be an usher, and I said, yeah, it's probably the only way I'm going to stay awake. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize that massive spirit of sleep was in the building. So I was an usher, and then I was talking to the guy. He says, yeah, there was a guy who died in the pew, and we're trying to get the pastor's attention to stop preaching because a man down, in pew number 4, man down, he died in the service. And instead of being reality of it, they tried to hide the fact. So the ushers went in, one sat on one side and pushed the body up, the other was sat on the other side, and they pretended all was well. Even though a guy died in the service, that's how bad the spirit of sleep is. Then you go and search the scripture where the prophet says the child is sleeping, or where Jesus said Lazarus just sleeping, even though he was beyond dead, and Jesus called him back. So your reality is sleep, lethargy. Some call it normal. The dial of normal. You live a normal life, going to 9 to 5. So the majority of people are zombies. So you go into these strongholds and you look around and you go to church after church after church. They claim it's a church, but we are the church. And you notice that the same thing, different place, same thing, different place, just like the nightmare I had about the church at the mall. Every time I tried to leave a church service, as I'm found to exit, it went into another service. And another service, another service. Pretty soon my family were separated. Tried to find a way out. We're under, it's a symbolic, the dream, the vision is similar, symbolic of under a spell. You can't leave. It's like the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like. You can die, but you can never leave the soul ties of the church, the false beast system. So where Jesus, the curtain was torn from top to bottom, religion died. They took the books of Paul. They murdered the disciples, took the books of Paul, and installed a warlock, which is called an apostle, and the prophet, which is a seer witch. They're seers of God, but they're seer witches. So the opposite, pastor, evangelist, teacher, and put them all in position to where you wouldn't know any better because they seem like nice people. So the false reality is you're stiff. You're stiff in the pew. You're dead in your sleep. But Jesus come to cause the way, the truth, and the life to cause you to live more abundant life. But it's wild and crazy out here now because so many people are asleep. Just like we talked about, the faith test was in 2020, and 70%, approximately 70%, failed the test of faith and went into fear. And then we talked about all diseases are parasitical, which are easily cured, but not by the snake on a stick. So a lot can be talked about this. A lot needs to be talked about this. But otherwise, go back to sleep. Because you keep waking up in a nightmare because there's a spell over the area. So when I go in these strongholds, I keep walking, doing prayer walks, declaration prayer walks. And then I go back home and close my eyes in my chair, my lazy boy, and say, Lord, show me what went on, what transpired, and what's going on. And then you can't see if you knock down Satan's castle unless you can see in the spirit. Because in the physical, the buildings seem intact. You throw a brick at it, put a dent in it, whatever. But you barely get anything done unless you understand that we are just a humble servants. And just like Daniel prayed and then deployed the angels. So a lot of stuff is being done in the heavenly realm. We don't have to do it here, but the thing is we have to know who is God. And we have to wake up. Wake up! We have to wake up. Because they're under a gospel. A ghost spell. A ghost spell. They don't read the book of Acts. They don't launch. A failure to launch. They don't read the rest of the books. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Easter, Christmas, Valentine's Day. Round and around and around. Put you to sleep. Wake up! So it was amazing that I didn't understand why there was such a spirit of sleep and lethargy in the building. And then a lot of people don't realize that normally when they build a church building, somebody gets murdered. Somebody has to get murdered, and they bury them in the ground underneath the church. So it's built on death. Just as in Rome, they call it St. Peter's Basilica. I never looked up that word basilica, but over St. Peter's grave. They built on the death of St. Peter. That's why they have the upside down cross, which is also the peace sign, they call it, but it's not peace, it's death. And they got all the hippies to wear it when peace used to be up this way, not a 3 down. So you've been hoodwinked, which is a term of the KKK. You've been hoodwinked. You've been put under a spell. And the people that are awake need to break the spells off of the area. And we barely have anybody, because see, we're spread out all over the earth at the moment. Because Jesus sends them out 2 by 2. We're waiting for the 2 and the 3 and the 4 of the ecclesia, the real true church. The real true awakened believers. And that's what will cancel the spirit of sleep, which is death. Because you go back and read the script where it says, you're judging the body unworthily, which means many are sick and asleep. It's in the Bible. Many are sick and asleep because they're judging the body unworthily. And people are talking about, the wafer and the little flat synthetic wafer and the synthetic juice that they have. Like they think they're having communion when communion means communion with God. So when Jesus communed with them, he had a barbecue going, fish on the fire. It was not a dead, pretentious pretend to have communion. You reduced it to a wafer and a little cup of juice to keep you asleep in this time. Stay awake. Can you stay awake to listen to this? Get the word out.